My name is Kate Moriarty, and I'm the Director of Clinical Services. Thanks for coming today and for your interest in this important topic. I'd like to introduce Linda Puzan, who's an LICSW, which stands for Licensed Independent Clinical Social Worker. She's also a per diem staff here at LifePath. And Linda's been providing dementia coaching services for more than 5 years and is a certified trainer with the Alzheimer's Association. She has dedicated her entire career to serving and supporting older adults, so we are very pleased to have her.
And I'm an older adult now, so, that feels pretty good. Okay, so I'm assuming, everyone here, are you caregivers for someone with dementia? No. Okay, so, just wondering,
I'm a hospice volunteer.
you're a hospice volunteer. If people will just, shout out, I'm not gonna go around because we only have about an hour. But what do you hope to learn from this today? How about if I put it that way?
To be able to find people more supports
Okay,
that are giving care for
okay,
people with dementia.
okay, all right. Anybody else?
We are the inpatient therapy rehab team at Franklin.
Oh,
So
good.
this was we want to come and network. We want to know who our
Excellent.
resources are. So
Good. You'll make caregivers happy, so, too. Okay, so as you can see, I am more than my memory, the many faces of dementia. I will say I'm not gonna talk about the many faces of different types. There are a lot of different types, and I have done presentations on the 5 or 6 major types, but we're really gonna focus basically on Alzheimer's because it's the most prevalent, okay? And a lot of the interventions that we're gonna talk about today can be utilized with most other dementias as well. Okay, so here are, these are some of the other dementias. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of them. Frontal temporal lobe degeneration, dementia with Lewy bodies, Down syndrome and dementia, Korsakoff syndrome, and vascular dementia. And many people also have mixed dementias. So people can have Alzheimer's and vascular can be very typical. Okay? So is dementia the same thing as Alzheimer's? Let me ask you, yes or no?
No,
No. Okay. All right, how are they different?
I don't know, but I think you can have dementia from having an accident to
Okay,
your head or something like that.
okay, all right. All right, the reason I mention this because a lot of times I do dementia coaching with caregivers. And when we're talking, and I'll say to them, well, so can you tell me the type, does your mom have Alzheimer's disease? No, my mom has dementia. And that gets a little confusing because Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. Dementia is just an umbrella term. And the next slide has an umbrella. It's an umbrella term that says that there's cognitive issues going on, that decline in memory, language, problem solving, and interferes with activities of daily living. Because people, I know I have decline in memory and sometimes problem solving skills, but it doesn't interfere. I mean, everybody might have some of these, but when it starts interfering and getting worse, then, we question dementia. And these are just some of the other dementias under the umbrella. Anybody know how many dementias there are approximately out there in the world?
7 or 8.
7 or 8? I'll tell you that, I have read one that's at 400 and another one I've read is about 100. But it clearly is up there. There's a lot and some are reversible, some are not. Yeah, so there's a lot. Okay, next slide. All right, so how and why of dementia diagnosis? Because I asked people, did your mom or your dad or whoever get diagnosed? Yes, the doctor said my mom had dementia. Did the doctor do any tests? Well, did a little mini mental exam in the office. That's not really getting a full scope of the disease. I think sometimes, doctors might know their patients for a long time and have seen them progressively getting worse. But if you do try to get, and I advocate as best as families can do this, to work with the doctor, and, get a family history, you know, they're talking to the family. It's really good to talk to the individual with dementia, because then the family could say, you know, that's not true. You know, and give other information to help fill in the pieces. Cognitive testing, there's physical, neurological exams. You want to rule out other things that are causing cognitive impairment. You don't want to automatically, which I think can happen with ageism. Oh, she's 90, of course she has dementia. That's not necessarily true. Different ways too, like, so besides neurologic examinations, there's blood tests. There is brain imaging that can be done, CAT scans, PET scans. There's a tool that looks for something in the brain called beta amyloid, because amyloid and plaques are a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. And I know, the thing is, if anybody goes to a doctor and wants these tests, really important, you need to ask, does insurance cover it? Because insurance might not cover some of these. So that's really important to know. Particularly, I think maybe some, looking at, high levels of the beta amyloid, I don't know if insurance pays for that. But it does come in multiple forms. And the reason why we want to try to tease out, is it Alzheimer's? Could it be Lewy body dementia? Not only do they look a little different, but there's certain medications that you would give to one dementia, maybe not the other. And on top of that, there's research. So there is a Lewy body center, I think it's at Mass General, and they might want to do research so people can go to a clinical trial and do that. Yes, sir.
My better half was diagnosed, first they did an MRI, Shields did an MRI, ordered by the doctor. And it came back sort of fuzzy, but not too bad. So they took a spinal tap.
Okay,
Have you heard of this?
yes. They've been doing that, right? And I'm not sure, did insurance pay for that?
I assume so.
Okay.
I haven't got a bill yet.
Oh, good. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed.
Surprise.
But yes, and I think they're really trying to find some tests that they can automatically try to diagnose the disease if they can.
So if insurance doesn't pay for one or another kind of testing, how important would it be to struggle to pay for it anyway?
Well, that's a good question. I would say at the basic that you want lab work done, you want blood work done, maybe a CAT scan if needed, and maybe some, there's cognitive tests that a doctor can do. Those are typical ones to do if you don't get into the spinal tap and get into all of that. But you can always, I always say to families, do your best to advocate. You know, I try to give families questions when I meet with them. Let me give you some questions that when you talk to the doctor, here are some good questions to ask them to help you advocate for what you need to know. Okay, so right now, when we look at, if you look at these brains, a healthy brain and what an Alzheimer's brain looks like in very late stage, you could see a big difference. Right now, 6.5 million people in our country have dementia, and this is a worldwide disease. This is all over the world. 1 in 9 in our country have it. I have here, it's the 5th leading cause of death nationwide, though I've also read it's 7th. So basically, I will say it's in the top 10. Okay. Majority of people with Alzheimer's are women. Why do you think that's true? Why would women more likely have Alzheimer's?
Stress.
Stress? It's a good one.
They live longer.
Yes, it's because women live longer than men. Though I will say Lewy body dementia, which you can get a little earlier in life, it is higher in men than women, Lewy body. I'm not sure why, but you know, and I think that they're trying to figure that out. And the greatest risk factor for getting Alzheimer's disease, late stage. So, later in life is age. If you have a family history of Alzheimer's, it increases your risk. It doesn't mean you're gonna get it. And if you carry this, what is called this APOE4 gene on one of your chromosomes, if you carry the 4-4, you get one from each parent. You get a 2, a 3, and a 4. If you carry the 4-4, it increases your likelihood of dementia. If you carry the 3-3 combination, it's neutral. And if you carry the 2-2, they think it might protect you. You can have combinations of 2-4, 3-4. So, that is an issue that's being very much studied too. But again, I want people to know, just because you have a history in the family does not mean you're automatically going to get it. It's just like, I have a lot of cancer in my family. Does it put me at risk? Perhaps, but I can't sit there and twiddle my thumbs and worry, oh my God, I'm gonna get cancer. I think that's the issue with genetic testing now, that, you can get tested for a lot of these things. So research, they're looking at lifestyle choices, drug trials, and genetics. Anybody know of some lifestyle choices you can do to try to prevent yourself from getting dementia? I like it.
Exercise.
Exercise is one.
Eat healthy.
Mediterranean diet, they're saying particularly. That's really good, the Mediterranean diet. Anything else?
Using your page.
Keep your brain engaged. When they talk about crossword puzzles, I don't know, debates, discussion groups, whatever, socialization. We talk about an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation a lot in our country. Is, having some social outlets so people who are elders, who live alone, who don't have much family or any family and little socialization, they're going to be at higher risk for problems and potentially dementia. I will say there are some researchers who say that type 2 diabetes is probably the third form of Alzheimer's disease. That you are at much higher risk of getting Alzheimer's if you have diabetes. Yes.
How about having an accident? Like I had a fractured skull as a child. Does that lead to it too?
That doesn't mean it will lead to it. I think it's that thing about hitting your head, concussions. I mean, I've fallen on ice some years ago twice and had to go to the emergency room and I had a concussion both times. I don't know. Will that impact? Potentially. I think they could, if they looked at my brain, maybe see scarring. But again, it doesn't, we just have to be careful. I think, that's the best we could say. You go out in ice, wear appropriate shoes or don't go out, those type of things. But we talk about football players really being at high risk of dementia at a very young age, in their 40s. All right, so now we're going to get a little bit about Alzheimer's disease, and then we're going to look at interventions. So these are typical problems with Alzheimer's disease. Memory loss is the big one. My mom's memory, she keeps repeating herself. Language problems, this type of thing. I want the thing. I just went to visit a family and the man said, I can't find my hands. And he can't find his gloves, is what he's trying to say. Difficulty doing familiar tasks, that's things that you can really pick up on. Well, my mom always was able to cook. I don't know, she forgot to put the eggs in the omelet recipe. That's not gonna work. Well, that's odd that she would do that. Decreased judgment. We get very nervous with this with people with dementia living alone, even if they have family who check in on them, because this is where scammers can get a hold of you with the decreased judgment. Problems with abstract type thinking. Misplaced things. How many of you misplace things? Okay. Now, most of the time when you misplace things, you find them eventually, right? When you have dementia, you usually don't. And when you misplace things, you do things like, I mean, I put my car keys here. And where did I put my car keys? Somebody with dementia might take the car keys and put them in the freezer. And you're putting them in places that, it's like, why are they in the oven? Why are they in my shoe? They're not putting them in normal places where you might, put it down and say, I can't find my car keys. Change in mood or behavior. Sometimes people in the earlier stages, people are noticing problems and might say something to them, and they might get agitated. And say, my memory's fine. I'm fine, leave me alone. You might hear that type of thing. Changes in personality. My mom has always been sweet. I don't know why I'm picking on mom, but my mom's always been sweet. And now my mom isn't. She's actually, it seems a little disinhibited. She's telling me, you don't look good today. My mother would never talk to me like that. Sometimes it's the opposite. My mom is so sweet, and I don't know. I love this change in her. This is great. Sometimes I've heard that. Loss of initiative. This is a big one. If the person has hobbies and things to do and they don't want to do them, it could be because they can't anymore. For them to get started on a project that they know how to do. Well, my mom always loved to knit, or my dad always loved making birdhouses. I don't know why they're not doing that anymore. They don't have the ability and they're losing the initiative and motivation. They don't have the motivation for it. Okay, so stages of the disease, there's the preclinical stage. And this means there's biomarkers in the brain that might show earlier signs of Alzheimer's, but there are no symptoms. For research, this is kind of fascinating for some researchers because they have studied brains of young people, who have died of other things. And some of those brains have the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. And they're like, why? This person's in their 20s and 30s, and no sign of a problem. And this is really exciting in the sense that if they're looking at this and say, what kicks off the plaques and tangles to cause a problem at this stage? Mild cognitive impairment. People usually mild cognitive impairment, they're still driving, they can still do a lot of things. But people are noticing they might be having a little problem. Usually people are very close to them. Some people, what they call MCI, will stay there and not get worse. And a percentage of people will go on to Alzheimer's with MCI. So they watch those folks. Stages. I think, there's a 7-stage model. There's an 8-stage model. I like the 3-stage. Early, middle, and late. That seems to be the easiest. And mild stage people can function independently and might need some help. And they might still work and might still drive. And this is important because a lot of times, if somebody has dementia, a family member might say, Mom has dementia, that's it, she's got to go to a nursing home. That's it. Well, Mom's fine, she looks good. She's just got some slight memory impairment. That doesn't mean somebody needs 24/7 care. When a person starts progressing through the disease, moderate stage, this is the hardest stage, I think, for people. Moderate stage is usually the longest because this disease can go on for 2 to 20 years. Communication problems, people have trouble doing their activities of daily living. Behavioral changes, agitated, maybe up at night. So you could see if you're a caregiver, this could be difficult to be dealing with this. Late stage is around the clock care. Usually people in late stage are bedridden. I do some hospice volunteer work. And because I work with people with dementia a few times, the hospice program has assigned me to people with late stage dementia. And, they're in bed and their caregiver can go shopping and do things. And it's just, monitoring them, maybe holding their hands, playing music, but they're not up and about and around. Any questions on this, on stages? Yes.
Just wonder how self-aware are people about what's going on for them people.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit
Okay.
because the important thing is, it does not help when we get into the communication. It does not help to say, you have Alzheimer's. Now, you've got to remember that. Nobody I know says, thank you for telling me. I'll never ask you again. So eventually you do lose insight. Early stages, you can have it and say, I want to do some pre-planning because you want to plan when you still have the ability to do so. Later stages, you can't be making decisions. Your capacity to make decisions gets compromised. Okay, all right. So now we're going to talk, well, what do you do? And there's something called, which I really like, the Massachusetts Alzheimer's Association started this. It's called habilitation therapy. It's not rehab, because people with Alzheimer's, you can't rehab them to go back. So we're looking at where they are now and looking at what are their strengths and what can we do to help maintain their strengths. And the approach is non-pharmacological, which means any of us can do this with, you want training or insight in how to do this. So you learn how to communicate with people with dementia. You look at the physical environment, how to enhance it, how you do personal care with someone. I call it failure-free activities, which I'll talk about. And we look at behavior as communication. Like, what is a person's behavior telling me if they're having a problem, right? I mean, if I saw all of you sitting here and doing this, I'd say, I think they're bored. Behavior tells you a lot by looking at people's behavior. Okay, so let's look at the physical environment. Lighting in the house is important. We might want to put lights so people can find their way to the bathroom. They may need to limit access to indoor or outdoor areas. Now, why would you want to limit somebody?
So they don't wander off.
In case they have a wandering issue. Though I do have people with dementia who do go out and the families are fine with it. And, the person knows where they live, they know the stop signs, they know to watch for cars. And I say to the family, that's great. And I would just say 6 months down the road, 3 months, you gotta watch this because it's gonna change. I'm glad it's okay now, but it's not always gonna be like that. Safety devices for cabinets and refrigerator. Not everybody might need safety devices, but why is that in there, do you think?
Some people do.
Some people do. You might be worried about medication, somebody going in the medication closet, somebody who thinks X-Lax is chocolate, that kind of thing. Chemicals, yeah, or taking your meds instead of their own. So you want to pay attention to that. Safe pathways throughout the house. This you don't want. This wire that we see here, you don't want this stuff in the person's pathway in the house. Throw rugs are a problem. You'll see a lot of people, and even Lewy body dementia, and maybe sometimes with Alzheimer's, people might walk like this and shuffle. So they're going to be at a high risk of falls. So anything that you can get out of the way. Color contrast. Floors, toilets, tables, plates. Okay, toilets can be very important, particularly for men, because I've had a lot of people tell me my husband is peeing in a bucket next to the toilet, or he's peeing on the floor, or he's peeing in the sink. And, we discuss, what does your bathroom look like if I haven't been to the home? And if everything's white, it might be hard for them to see the toilet. So it could just be getting a contrasting colored toilet seat can be very helpful. The same with tables and plates. A white plate on a white table can be hard to see. I think doing color contrast with plates is very helpful. I highly recommend people who are I do this myself. I don't, when I don't know something, there's a place called the AlzheimersStore.com. And if you go on that, they have a whole bunch of dementia-friendly items, and you could put in plates, and they'll list a whole bunch of plates they have for sale. They have, dementia-friendly telephones. They have activities listed, they have forks, spoons, so there's a lot of things on there that can be very helpful.
What is that again?
It's called the AlzheimerStore.com. If you just Googled Alzheimer's store, it would come up. And I will say this, if you see something on there that you like, I highly recommend that you check other sites like Walmart or Amazon or something, just to price compare. See if somebody is selling it, same exact thing for a different price. Okay, I mentioned removing clutter and limit amount of noise. This is important. I don't know how many houses I go to, the TV's on, the radio might be on in the other room, grandkids are running around. And when you're trying to get the person's attention to do something, it's hard for them to focus, and they might even get more agitated. So if we want to get the person's attention with dementia, we want things to be quiet. We want them to be faced, look at each other so that we can communicate effectively. Yeah,
About the noise item. I've also read that music has some useful application for people with dementia. So if the radio is on, but it's playing mostly classical music or something, would that be less disturbing than
Yeah, no,
the
it's a
kind of
good
jangly
question.
sounds?
I would just say when I say to caregivers, so you need to tell me what the problem is, because if they say, well, classical music seems to settle my mom down. But if your mom's hard of hearing and you have music on and you're trying to get her to bathe and she's getting agitated, pushing you away, maybe having the competing sound, but it could be fine. It could actually be very soothing. So you want to find that out. Because what works for one person won't work for another. Personal care, allowing as much independence as possible versus learned helplessness. Do we know, anybody understand learned helplessness? Right? Really bad. I've seen this in nursing homes. I've seen people feed residents where the person can feed themselves. Eventually, you learn how to feed yourself, even though you still can. So if the person, because a lot of times what caregivers do is say, I just want to get this over with. I'm busy, I got a lot to do, and I'll just do this. And it takes away independence. And you really want, if the person could still dress themselves, maybe they can't pick out their own clothes. And they're having a hard time with that. But if you put their clothes out and they can dress themselves appropriately, that's being independent on some level. Let the person know what is happening. It's really important to say, Mom, let's get dressed. We're going out. We're gonna go to the doctor. Okay, and then we'll go to lunch. I've had a lot of people say, come on, Mom, let's get dressed. We gotta go out. We got a lot to do today. I got a lot, then we're gonna go. And the person's already lost. So you really gotta break down your communication and what you want them to do. You might just say, let's get dressed and not worry about going out.
What if you know it's something that's gonna agitate them, and in order to get them to do something, you have found it easier, because the thing that
Yeah.
they're gonna do is gonna agitate them, not to tell them about that thing.
You might not say we're going to the doctor's until you get there. And just say, get dressed, we're going for a ride. Now, this is important because you want to be careful, because people in earlier stages, that wouldn't be okay, who understand that. People in later stages who don't understand and don't remember, it's really different. So that's kind of what we're playing with here. And we'll talk about communication a little more. Do simple short steps. Don't give too many steps. Mom, put on your pants. Let's put on your socks. We do it one by one. Simple choices. Open-ended questions are not good for people with particularly later stage dementia. To say, what do you want to do today? Not a good question. What would you like to eat? They might say nothing. And when you're better off saying, Mom, you want peanut butter and jelly or grilled cheese? You give them two choices. You want to wear the red dress or the blue dress? That's that's a good way to communicate and be simple choices. Here we go with the music. Make the process fun, whatever you're doing. Play music, you can reminisce, you could sing. You know, a lot of times, and this is particularly, playing music might be good when you're bathing someone who might have an issue with not wanting to bathe. That's a big one for a lot of people with dementia. So failure-free activities. I call them failure-free because we want to give people activities that they can do and they can't fail at. Which is, it's that simple. So, a purposeful activity that is simple. Folding laundry is a typical one people think of. They provide a positive emotion throughout the day. I have some, what I call failure-free activity lists. And I say to families, when I give them the lists, I don't know what to do with my mom. She just sits there and watches TV because the caregiver doesn't know what to do. And what's really helpful, you know, I say, well, you know, what if we had your mom cut out coupons for the store? And they said, well, we don't use coupons. I said, well, it doesn't matter. They said, Mom, I'm going shopping. Would you mind cutting out coupons for me? And Mom's sitting at a table, and whether she cuts them out correctly or not, it doesn't matter. She's enjoying the activity, polishing silverware. I used to do some work in nursing homes on dementia units. And I actually had a group of women, just because we were trying to find some different types of activities, where we found a whole bunch of old socks and we put knots in them. And, you know, hundreds of socks with knots in them. And I just said to this group of women, somebody put knots in these socks. Would you take them out? They sat together and were taking the knots out and rolling up the socks, and they were enjoying themselves. And it was something familiar because it, you know, it was related to doing laundry. And we could be very creative. Scrapbooks. Let's make a scrapbook. Let's cut out pictures for the grandkids. We could do that. Trial and error. What doesn't work today might work tomorrow. Sorting activities are great. Sorting playing cards, colored chips. I mentioned this, I had a lady in the nursing home who wanted to leave. She was on the dementia unit and said she had to go to work. And the staff said, you have Alzheimer's disease. You're in a nursing home now. You know how well that went over? So I talked to her. And I said, you know, she said, I have to go. And I said, well, would you mind doing something for me? If you help me with something I need done, that's fine, but then I'm getting the bus and I'm out of here. I said, that's fine with me. And I ran to the activity room and I got a whole bunch of colored bingo chips. And I put them in a pile and I asked her to sort them by color. And she did that for over an hour. And then it was time for supper, and then she forgot that when she went to supper. That's much better than agitating someone. I do not have dementia. I do not live here. We don't want people, that kind of communication. So we want activities that people can do alone, and activities they could do with other people. And I say, you know, if you do an activity for a person who's alone, when I talked about lack initiative or motivation, you can't just say, hey, Mom, cut out coupons. You really need to get people started. You got to show them, here's what I'd like you to do. And then you can leave. A lot of times caregivers, if they live with a caregiver, I'd say the caregiver says, I'm in the kitchen, I got a lot of work to do. So sit your mom at the table. You know, she might enjoy being with you at the table while you do your thing and she does hers. Bless her heart, I met one caregiver. She said her mom does dishes. She said, I let my mom do the dishes. And when she's done with them and they're in the drainer, they're all greasy and dirty, I let her do them. And when she goes to sleep, I redo the dishes. But it makes her so happy to do. Well, that's a good thing to do. That's really smart. Rather than saying you can't do the dishes anymore because they're still greasy. And there are apps that you could look online for people with dementia. I've seen some things out there. So for those who are more savvy with, their phones and computers, you can take a look at that. Some people can do games online and do things like that. You can take a look at that too. Okay, all right, so behavior as communication. So you want to understand behavior, so you know how to intervene. So if somebody's rummaging or searching for something, they're rummaging through the closets, what do you think why they're doing that? Take a guess.
They're looking for something.
Somebody, yeah, easy, they're looking for something. They're bored. I always say with a lot of these, people are bored too, hey, they don't know what to do. So they're walking around and, oh, there's stuff in the closet. There's stuff in the dresser drawer. Or they might like to go in there and look at things and sort things. Pacing or wandering. Anybody have an idea why somebody might be doing that?
Don't know what else to do.
Don't know what else to do, need exercise. And some people have what's called with some dementias, akathisia, restless walking. People with frontal temporal lobe dementia, they like to walk. Pace. They'll walk, a lot of them, until they drop. You really got to get them to rest sometime. But some people might need exercise. That might be telling us, I want to go out, I want to walk a little bit. Repeated questions. What do we do now? This is the one that's really hard for people. What do we do? Where are we going? When are we going to do that? You just asked me that. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. When are we going to go? So you wind up in this vicious circle. So I think with repeated questions, when I talk about failure-free activities, we say, Mom, we're not going now. I need you to do this. So we address the issue and then we distract. And you try to distract the person with something else to do. Resisting care. That's a lot of time that's around bathing. People don't want to bathe. I already showered. No, thank you. Why do you think people with dementia might not want to bathe?
I think they can do it.
They think they could do it themselves, and as the caregiver, they can't. You've already watched. Sometimes people, I don't know why this happens, but a lot of people with dementia don't like water sprayed on them anymore, even if they like a shower in the past. So, we talk about maybe starting from the feet up. Sponge bathing is, you could do sponge bathing a lot and stay very clean. That may be giving the person as much independence in the shower as they can, and you do the areas that they're having a hard time washing. This is something to play around with. Hallucinations that are, paranoia, paranoid delusions, these can be typical too. Delusions, you are not my spouse. Okay, no, you're not. You're having an affair. You took my money. I know you took my money. Well, the daughter probably took over mom's bank books because mom's not paying her bills. But these are typical things that happen. Sometimes people have hallucinations, sometimes visual. I've seen people, Lewy body dementia, people are likely to have some hallucinations. I've seen, children in trees. But I do ask too, does your mom, dad, do they have eyesight problems? Well, dad has cataracts that haven't been corrected. So if you have dementia and cataracts, you might have illusions. Something might look like, oh my God, there's things in the trees, there's animals in the trees. And really what it is eyesight issues. And with hallucinations, if people aren't afraid of them, if they're having them, it's good to talk to the doctor about it, but it's not like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Mom is seeing kids in the trees. Mom may be okay seeing kids in the trees. So you don't have to correct her. But if somebody's scared, that would be important. And say to the doctor, my mom's scared. There are medications out there to treat various issues with dementia. Sometimes people are also put on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, just like the rest of us. Okay,
Linda,
yes,
UTIs?
oh, thank you. UTIs. That's a big one. Usually and you'll see it change quickly, because your mom has had UTIs, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you say what you
It
experienced?
just changes her behavior and she's seen people, she still swears there was a man in her closet with a knife and she ran across the street, so, you know, even remembering that and nothing like that ever happened, so.
And it was a UTI?
Yeah.
And then she got treated for it. Okay, so that's real important. We want to rule out UTIs. Thank you. So behavior as communication, we took rummaging, they might be looking for something, wandering, they're bored, repeated questions, anxious, they want to talk. Resistant care, they're afraid or they don't understand or they're not ready. This might not be the best time of day to do, you know, if you want to shower, not the best time of day. I know a lot of people who bring their parents or their spouse to the hairdresser to get their hair washed. Because they like going to the hairdresser and that's the way to get their hair washed. Talking to an empty chair. A spouse is cheating. Someone taking my money that we talked about. Why would somebody think their spouse is cheating, do you think?
You don't recognize them?
They don't recognize them, or they start leaving the house. And it's like, gee, where are they going? You know, sometimes the mind, it just twists some things. But that seems to be a typical one. This is a handout that I give caregivers, a do not do list and what to do instead with just some examples. So you don't want to argue. You don't want to say, we're not going to the movies. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. You say, that's a great idea. I want to go too. Let's go later. We'll go later, not now. Matter of fact, I need you to wash the dishes now. So we're gonna distract. I don't know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We might not want to do the dishes at 2 in the morning. Don't reason. No, you can't have candy. You have diabetes. You want to offer something else. How about eating this sandwich? We want to try to stay away from no. No, you can't. No, not now. No, not this. I don't know any of us that like people saying no to us. And doing it to people with dementia is very agitating. So we want to take a no and turn it to a yes. So you want to get things to be positive. We don't want to shame people. You wet your pants again. You know, let's just go in the room and get cleaned up. Can do statements instead of you can't. Do not push reality. This is hard for people because if people say, well, I don't want to lie to my mother. She keeps saying, her mother's alive and she's got to go visit her. My mother's 90. Her mom can't be alive. So I tell her that her mother's dead and I have to tell her repeatedly all day. All day long, she's sad that her mother's dead. Nobody told her. So we're better off, because if somebody's saying, I want to see my mom, what does that mean to you?
Comfort.
Comfort. And most people, if you don't, we don't really care what age they are, but if you ask them, a lot of times people with dementia will say they're 40. They're 35 or 40. So their mom, they might be back. My mom's alive. I need to get to her. So you want to validate. You know, you really love your mom. You talk about her a lot. Tell me about your mother. You know, she's a really great woman. Much better than pushing the truth. That's only going to hurt the person. You don't have to correct misstatements. That is not a pen. That's a paintbrush. Because the person's trying, they're getting the two things mixed up. They might need help. You might say, do you want to paint? That's a paintbrush or that's a pen. Don't ignore troubling emotions. You know, a lot of times people, you know, they'll ignore the person's fearful or angry or sad. This is a way for the person to get more agitated, and then you might have what they call a catastrophic reaction. So we want to provide reassurance. You know, I'll go look in your closet. There's somebody in my closet. Well, I'll go take a look. I'll take care of it. Don't you worry. I'm here for you. I notice a lot of people with dementia really do well with holding hands. I love you. I care about you. Soothing, positive words seem to be very helpful to people. And don't talk fast, as I mentioned earlier, and give too much information. We want to do, we really want to break that down. Negative body language. Like, if I'm talking to somebody with dementia, I'm not gonna stand here like this. I'm gonna sit down with that person. I'm gonna go on their level. Because that might be threatening for me standing over somebody. Okay, any questions on this? Okay. All right, so this is Pooh. What day is it, asked Pooh? It's today, squeaked Piglet. My favorite day, said Pooh. That's very typical of the kind of the logic of Alzheimer's. I do say to families, I'm going to teach you a new language. When they struggle with communication, I said, we're going to learn the language of dementia. Because reason, your logical brain, we got to do something different. So we will learn how to do that. Okay. So we have pictures, various pictures all over the world. I wanted to show diversity of people because this is all over the world with dementia. Okay, so this I got from different people who had dementia and what they had to say. Include, involve, and respond as though you understand me, even when you don't. At 93, so deep in dementia that she didn't remember any details of her life, my mother somehow still knew songs. Those with dementia are still people, and they have stories, and they have character, and they're individuals, and they're all unique. And they just need to be interacted with on a human level. Okay, and this last slide, it's what LifePath offers. We have on our website that we do dementia coaching for families. Kate Moriarty here. Kate does dementia coaching. I do. We have another colleague of ours. So when we get referrals, we get in touch with caregivers and can set up a time to meet. And sometimes we do it online. We don't have to do it in person. Sometimes people come to the office. I went to visit a family yesterday and the mother with dementia was in the room. I said, we can't talk, can we? And they said, no, we can't. They said, well, let's plan for you to, can you come to my office? And they said, yes. I said, well, maybe we could talk more freely when you come to the office. So we have dementia coaching and we have a caregiver support groups. We have 2 groups, a Thursday morning group at 10, and then the first and third Wednesday from 5 to 7 in the evening. Deb attends one of our support groups. You want to say anything about it?
Oh, it's awesome. If you just feel like you can say anything and not judgmental and have a breakdown and then recover and have to listen to somebody else. And it's very, very good.
I know.
Get ideas.
Right? I say to people, I have had caregivers say, I'm not a group person. I don't do groups. And I said, well, why don't you just try? You don't have to say anything. All I want you to do is introduce yourself and what your dementia care issue is. Other than that, just listen. And if you don't like it, you don't have to come back. But if you do, you can stay and you can listen. It's a group where people come and go. They don't have to come every week. I think I run that group on Thursday mornings. We have another colleague, Andy Drew, right? Andy Drew runs the evening one. So we do have opportunities here to try to help people with this disease and caregivers.